This is Chapter 11, Powers of Congress, discussion number 5, Other Duties of Congress. The Congress has other duties to take care of as well, other than just passing laws. For example, they have the power to propose constitutional amendments. In order to do that, they do have to have two-thirds vote in the House and two-thirds vote in the Senate separately. They also have electoral duties. The House of Representatives is responsible to elect a president if no candidate gets electoral majority. In this case, though, the House of Representatives votes, each state gets a vote, and then it goes to the majority. So even though California has 50-some representatives and Montana might have one, each of those states get one vote for president. Now, the Senate gets to pick the vice president if no candidate gets an electoral vote. And if you think about it, that makes some sense because the vice president will be in charge of the Senate when they're elected. So essentially they're picking the person to take charge of their meetings. Now, if a vice president is not able to fulfill their duties, that can be because the president resigned and so they got promoted, or the vice president resigned because they did something illegal, or death would be another more common reason. What happens is that the president will pick who they'd like to be the next vice president, and then the Senate and the House both have to approve that nomination so the person would take that spot. And that's according to the 25th Amendment. Another power of the Congress is the idea of removing members from the House, from the executive branch and the judicial branch. Civil officers, that would include president, vice president, members of the cabinet, other politically appointed people in the executive branch, also judges, can be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So what exactly does that mean and how does it work? First of all, the House of Representatives can say that they suspect that someone has committed some type of action that ought to have them removed from office. It does not necessarily have to be a criminal offense. It just says treason, bribery, or high crime or misdemeanor. Now, the idea of what is a misdemeanor can be flexible, but generally it's for some type of legal problem. So, the House can vote to charge the person with a bad act. Okay, they only need a majority vote. Then the trial takes place in the Senate, and the Senate may convict that person, and all the conviction means is that they're going to be removed from the office. It doesn't mean that they still don't have to go in front of a judge and a jury for jail time or for fines. None of that is included. It's all it is for removal for office. And if the Senate votes with at least two-thirds of their complement, then the person is removed from office. Now, if the president is being charged by the House with a high crime or misdemeanor, then the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court takes over running the Senate. The person is still, like I said, the person is still subject to criminal proceedings in regular courts should they be convicted by the House. What else do they get to do? First of all, the Senate gets to confirm every single person who's a part of the president's cabinet, or a lot of the top positions and a lot of the agencies that may not have a cabinet level position, but they still are an agency of the United States government. So the people who lead these organizations do have to be approved by the Senate. The president just can't put in whoever they want to. Treaties. They can be negotiated by the president, they can be signed by the president, but they don't matter one bit until the Senate approves it with a two-thirds vote. In fact, sometimes the Senate can add stuff to the treaty before they approve it, and that gets to be a little bit embarrassing to the president because then he's got to go back to the person he negotiated with and said, gee, it was really nice negotiating with you, but my Senate said that we need to add these things, and then they have to kind of go through the whole process again. One of the key things to remember, though, that when the treaties are ratified by the Senate, they become federal law in and of themselves, which means that everyone has to obey them. The president can have an agreement with another country, and that's not really legally binding on everyone, but once a treaty is ratified, that becomes binding on everyone in the United States. Um, Also, if the president says, no, we're not going to have this bill with a veto, the Congress can override that veto by having 2/3 of the House vote against the president's veto and ratify or repass the bill, and then the Senate with 2/3 also passes the bill. Then the president's veto doesn't matter to anything. The Congress also has the power to establish and organize the judicial court system. The only court that's mentioned in the Constitution is the Supreme Court, but we have federal district courts, we have Court of Appeals, we have military courts, we have international trade courts, and the list goes on and on. These were all different types of courts created by the Congress to help assist in the enforcement of the laws of the United States. And then once those courts are created, what judges show up in those courts? They are picked by the president, but they still have to be approved by the Senate. So it's not just anyone can go in just because the president likes you. You have to prove yourself able and capable to the Senate, and then the Senate will vote on you. Well, if they want to, they can vote on you and say, yes, you get to have that position, or no, you don't. Congress also has the power to investigate what's going on in the country. Now, there might be several different reasons that this power of investigation is used. First of all, they might be getting ready to write some type of legislation and need information to know what the possible effects could be, or even if the law is necessary. Also, executive branches are enforcing the laws that they wrote, and also spending the money for the budget that they passed. And so they can investigate the members of the executive branch or just the agencies themselves to make sure that the money is being spent appropriately and that the appropriate actions are being taken care of. Sometimes Congress just wants to focus attention on a particular issue, so they'll have experts come in and talk about it. Expose questionable activities of public officials or private persons in order to call attention to maybe something that Congress would like to see stopped, or that people are behaving poorly and they need to have their behavior brought to light. And other things might be is that members of Congress might have something that is kind of like their favorite thing to do, favorite thing to talk about. They might want to help preserve the forests, or they might want to make sure that people are getting jobs. And so therefore, because it's a particular interest of a member of Congress, they might say that, hey, we're going to have a hearing about that. We're going to have people testify to bring attention to this is a necessary idea that needs to be taken care of here in the United States. This concludes discussion number 5, the other duties of Congress. It also concludes Chapter 11, the powers of Congress.